This week on The Watchman, we are taking you inside one of the most overlooked but important sites in the entire Old Testament. These are the ancient ruins of Lachish, and for a time, it was the second largest city in the entire Judean kingdom, second only to Jerusalem. And that made it a prime target for the mighty Assyrian Empire. It's a story you may not have heard about, but you're going to hear about it today. We're joined by our good friend, Danny the Digger Herman, renowned archaeologist and tour guide, who tells us what the fall of Lachish at the hands of the Assyrian Empire meant for Jerusalem, for Israel, and for the Jewish people. Folks, this is a fascinating, untold story. You're going to hear about it today from Lachish. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN. Well, Danny the Digger, welcome back to The Watchman, my friend. And look, you always take us to some of the most fascinating archaeological, historical sites here in the land of Israel, the land of the Bible. But I am particularly excited today about where we are, Lachish. I would say, Danny, this is one of the more overlooked, but very, very important sites here in Israel. Tell us about this amazing place.
Yes, perhaps this is one of the most underestimated sites in Israel from ancient history. We've been to Masada. Crowds go there on a daily basis with the cable car. And something just as dramatic happened here 700 years earlier. Where are the crowds?
Yeah.
We are right in front of the very ramp that was created around the year 701 BC by the mighty Neo-Assyrian forces who were determined to conquer the second biggest city of the Judean Empire.
As you mentioned, Danny, this was the second largest city next to Jerusalem in the Judean kingdom. That's fascinating. Tell us a little bit about what Lachish looked like in that day. How many people lived here? This was a thriving center.
It is actually bigger than biblical Jerusalem. So we think that
Really?
maybe 10,000 people settled here. There were also a lot of farms around. The vineyards that you see to this day were also probably the landscape and the main economical drive in this area, as well as trade. The international highway, the Via Maris, passing not so far away from here.
And what is that? When you say the international highway, what do you mean by that?
The ancient Near East developed along big rivers. The pharaohs in Egypt along the Nile, and the Akkadian cultures along the Mesopotamia, along the area between the Mesopotamos, the two rivers, Tigris and Euphrates.
Modern day Iraq.
Modern day Iraq and Syria.
Yeah.
And these two big global forces would interact with one another, either trade or battle, and this land is in the middle.
This is really, Lachish is at a crossroads.
At the very junction of a very important international highway system by ancient terms. The Israelites really settled here on an intense level from the 9th century, 8th century, but then in 701, the Neo-Assyrian Empire, after conquering and exiling all the tribes of the north, the Israelites, Sennacherib's eyes are on the southern area.
Right.
Jerusalem is the capital, but Lachish is the real economical center, as well as trade center.
Yeah. For our viewers, Danny, give us a little bit of background on the Assyrians, King Sennacherib. This was, in its day, 7th century, thereabouts, 6th, 7th century. This was the powerhouse in the Middle East, right? Tell us a little bit about the Assyrian Empire.
They are a force established again along the Tigris and the Euphrates. The Iraq of today, Baghdad of today would be then Nineveh.
Biblical city of Nineveh.
Yeah, which Jonah took 3 days to cross according to the biblical account. Sennacherib ruling in that part establishes a power that is equivalent to what the Roman Empire will later be. Okay, it's the first imperial power that just goes against all its frontiers and crushes any resistance and enslaves the people with extreme brutality. Tiglath-Pileser and Sargon have conquered the northern area. Sennacherib is the next generation. His eyes is really towards Egypt. He wants to get both a hold of this region and open as well the region for continuing to Egypt. The main goal is Egypt. There's a lot more wealth in Egypt that he wishes to capture, and Lachish is in the way. Lachish must be taken.
Must be taken.
So in 701 BC, we have it very well documented, mostly by Sennacherib. The Bible only hints to this campaign. He comes with his forces and he camps and besieges the city. He makes a ramp that will be built against one of its corners, and eventually he conquers it. We know this from archaeology, not from the Bible, but not local archaeology. It's finds that were made in Nineveh in the 19th century. And after the finds were made there, then local archaeologists here started asking, where did it happen? And eventually we found out right here.
Wow.
You are looking at the very ramp that the Assyrians built against where the flag of Israel is today. And we have here stones that are like the size of tennis balls from the slingshots. We found countless arrowheads, helmet decorations, okay? There was a fierce battle at this very place, which is now nice and quiet.
You had mentioned on our way over that King Sennacherib may have actually been here at the siege of Lachish, the powerful king of the Assyrian Empire.
Yeah, he personally led his forces.
So he was here, he personally led his forces.
I think he camped over there. This is like a hill viewing the site. And if this is the place of the ramp, then he probably sat and commanded and monitored that it's done properly.
Sennacherib is here, he's camped out. What does he see? What is going on here?
Two sets of walls around the top of the mound. He sees a gate complex over here, which is always the most vulnerable part of the site. But that gate is a very well designed with two actual gates and a killing zone in the middle. He knows that attacking from the gate might put him into a trap. He chooses the spot where the hill around the mountain is not as steep, and his soldiers then start putting a lot of stones. Look, we found them. A lot of beaten earth and stones and a fill to eventually create a ramp that will enable battering ram to pound against the wall.
Very similar to Masada.
Very similar story, and even a more heroic one, because at Masada at the end they committed suicide. Here it seems that they battled till the bitter end, and we have found archaeological evidence of apparently those who lost in battle. We found two caves filled with skulls. Skulls, meaning whoever they captured, they chopped their heads off and someone later piled it into a cave in the city.
Look, we had fierce Jewish Israelite resistance here to this siege, but I imagine once the Assyrians broke through, it had to be bloody and there had to be a lot of carnage.
Yes, level 3 in Lachish, the destruction level caused by Sennacherib and his Assyrian forces, is a very clear, thick layer of dark ash and total destruction. They really wiped out the Jewish resistance here. This was probably a major trauma for the whole region. On the other hand, Sennacherib failed to conquer the capital. Jerusalem itself was saved.
Dana, you've described the bloody siege here by the Assyrians at Lachish. Now we are standing at the very spot where all of that went down. Tell us about what happened at this spot.
In the back here, you can see the top of the wall peeking beyond the debris. More of it probably runs just beneath our feet. You can imagine the Judeans here terrified as they're seeing the Assyrians advancing with their battering ram. This is the very place where Lachish was taken.
And that battering ram, the intimidation factor as well with those battering rams.
Yes, and people that are captured in the battle are impaled, presented in front of the defenders. This was a very, very big tragedy from a Judean point of view.
Yeah, big victory for Sennacherib, as you explained. He was gloating about the conquest of Lachish, but then the Assyrians sent a contingent and set their targets on Jerusalem. What came next?
On the capital, okay? Number 1, this is number 2. And the amazing twist in this story is that Jerusalem is actually saved. Sennacherib accounts that he goes against Jerusalem, and he tells us that Hezekiah, the king of the Jews, who did not submit to my yoke, I locked him like a bird in a cage. but he doesn't say what happens next. He doesn't say how it ends. And the Bible tells us indeed that Jerusalem was spared. An angel of God attacked the Assyrian forces, caused a plague. 185,000 soldiers are dead.
He abandoned that siege of Jerusalem. The angel of the Lord, God Almighty, the God of Israel, intervened according to the Bible. Jerusalem was spared, and then